It's 6:00 p.m. I'm going to call the council to order. We have a quorum present. If you will please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Y'all may be seated. This Thursday, March 21st. I want to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. I hope everyone has had a great week. I don't see Chief Warner here. I wanted to thank Chief Warner once again for a wonderful engine ceremony, wet down push-in ceremony, and I want to thank all of the people that came to that ceremony and that supported our department and our city. I thought it was a very great turnout, and I thought he did a great job. Like I said, he had everything planned out perfectly. And anyways, I've been seeing a post already that the Fire Association has put out where they, a few hours after that ceremony, already went out on their first fire call, and they have since done several fire calls with it. So I hope they got a video of its first run. And they've done some wrecks, it looks like, and some other stuff. And they said so far the engine works perfectly. So they're very pleased and happy, and they wanted to thank council once again for giving them the fire engine. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, public comments. All right, council, I have a card in front of me, a public comment card. This is by Paul Knott. He would like to read some anonymous letters, and he would like permission to read these letters. He says he's timed them and that they will take exactly 4 minutes and 15 seconds. And as you know, we have rules and procedures that say that people that come to speak before public comments should be given an allotted 3 minutes, with the exception that council can overrule and give them an additional 2. So at this time, without knowing what these letters are, I have no idea if this 4 minutes is warranted. So council, I'm going to ask for you to give me a motion to tell me that you're going to give him permission or not permission in order to read these letters for 4 minutes and 15 seconds.
I'll make a motion to allow Mr. Knott to read the letter for as long.
Okay, to allow, was that what you said, Mr. Foster? Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Gutwa, did you vote? Are you?
Just abstain.
Okay, you're abstaining? Okay. 5-4, 1 abstain. Gutwa? Mr. Knott, if you'll go ahead and step forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the time. And I first of all need to apologize for the confusion. I'm not reading anonymous letters. I'm reading a statement about anonymous letters.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't understand that from the subject line that you had here.
And my presentation is being distributed to you now. My name is Paul Knott, a 37-year resident of Keene, the last 25 at 107 North Old Mansfield Road. And so do you have this beige presentation in front of you? And you're welcome to follow along with me. At the City Council meeting of March 7th, a councilman entered into record an anonymous letter from a concerned citizen. I propose that be the last time a letter from an anonymous source is presented to council. That anonymous letter, as I recall, criticized the mayor and maybe 1 or 2 council members. But even if the letter offered praise, which I think it also did, we need to know who authored those words. Not knowing who sent the letter sows seeds of mistrust and division and allows residents to think that it could have been anyone who wrote it. As Mr. Browning is aware, the 6th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees that the person being accused has the right to be confronted with the person making the accusations. Now, while an anonymous letter is certainly not a criminal matter, the principle still applies, that the Constitution's protection exposes the accuser's possible conflicts of interest, motives, biases. Why is the writer hiding behind a curtain of anonymity? This city council deserves better. The agenda at each council meeting, under the heading of public comments, reads that each person in attendance who desires to speak to the city council on an item not posted on the agenda shall speak during this section, public comments. Speaker card right here needs to be filled out and turned in. And prior to addressing the city council, I have the card. It asks for name, address, topic. When called to the podium, I state my name and address. With that information, anyone can search online to determine my educational background, whether or not my property taxes are paid, and if I voted in the last election. That information can be found. But that's what the public domain is. It's public. That's what open meetings are. They're public, they're transparent, they're open. We know who's speaking. It's public information. When a resident presents in public before the council, all who are in attendance or watching can not only evaluate the opinion that I express, but also can evaluate the potential for the speaker to serve our community. I know I do this. I look at that person and I wonder, would they be a candidate for the Celebration Committee, the Starfest Committee, the Flag Crew, the Parade Planning Committee, the Expo Planning Committee, Type A Board, Type B Board, Planning and Zoning, even the City Council? When anonymous, we'll never know. The anonymous letter does not lead to unity or reconciliation. It brings further division and disorder. If reconciliation were truly the goal, then the concern would have been brought privately in person. We all know the harmful effects of anonymous sources on social media. Fake news, fake accounts, fake names. This council needs to live in a house built on higher ground. I recommend to the City Council, in consultation with Mr. Browning, that we adopt a procedure that is very similar to this. All members of the public who communicate to the City Council during open session may do so in the following two ways. One, in person, having completed the speaker card, and only during the public comment section, or during an agenda item and only on the topic of that item, or any time when recognized by the mayor. Two, in person, and number two, in writing, via letter received at City Hall no later than 48 hours prior to the council meeting, indicating the writer's name, address, and phone number. That letter can be received and handed to any one of you. It can be U.S. Postal Service. It can be stuck. It can be handed to the receptionist in the lobby. Makes no difference, but the 48 hours allows Holly or Kit or one of you to verify that that person did write the letter. If you can't reach them by phone, you can drive to their house, but you can verify that that person did in fact write that letter. Said letter can be read aloud to the council by any council member, the reading of which includes disclosure of the writer's name and address. So in conclusion, the continued encouragement and public revelation of anonymous letters turns the council dais into a bully pulpit, behind which cowards can hide. Including your name with your opinion gives your opinion context. It demonstrates you stand by your convictions and energizes others who share your opinion. I recommend the City Council stop legitimizing anonymous letters.
Thank you, Mr. Knott. Agenda item number 4, reports. Number 4A, review and discuss the city manager's report. Mr. Batla?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Quite a bit to report tonight. The first report is regarding our budget process. As you know, the end of this month, we'll complete our second quarter, which will put us into mid-year. And we have to let a few of the accounts settle and reconcile. And this says April 4th, but it'll probably be the latter council meeting. We will start to present mid-year budgetary information. Also, I intend to kick off our process quite a bit earlier this year, especially the healthcare benefits. We're already researching those, getting some numbers. Those will be presented differently this year than in the past. I want to approach that a lot earlier, and so we will be kicking that off toward the end of next month as well. So we'll have to bring the budget committee back together also for that. Any questions on that one? Okay. Update on Spring Creek Road construction. The concrete work began this morning, and I just want to let everybody know, and this is for the benefit of the public, we temporarily patched it, and now we're starting the permanent concrete reconstruction of that, and that's going to be hopefully a good fix. We're doing it in phases for traffic issues. So, sidewalk project, we poured another approximately 200 feet from Spruce to Gale Street, so that continues. Impact fees. We are about halfway through the marathon on impact fees. The Impact Advisory Committee met, and we will have a report to council sent out probably tomorrow or early next week to give council enough time to review the report. And once council receives that report on the next agenda, we will have review, discuss, and take possible action on that committee report, including adopting a resolution to establish a public hearing date. So once we establish the public hearing date, there's a certain amount of time, at least 30 days, that has to be published. So there's a lot more roadway to go, but we are making progress on that. Last but not least, I sent council an email. This is just a little bit of an update, and this is for the benefit of the public. We had a major component of the sewer plant go down called a clarifier. That component is obsolete, so we have to retrofit that. And today we issued an emergency PO for $69,000 to fix that component. Until then, the sewer plant is at half capacity, so pretty crappy situation.
I knew you were going to say that.
I couldn't resist. The good news is, the silver liner is, I believe we can pay for this outside of this year's operating budget without having to dip into fund balance. That's really good news.
Okay, good.
So that's all I have on that.
All right, council, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Foster.
Yes.
On the sidewalk project,
Yes.
did we get down to the bridge over that little creek?
We skipped that bridge part, and that will be a separate component because of the cost of that expense. So I'll have
I
to
went
defer to
down
Don. He had kind of the master plan on that. We had skipped over that creek for that bridge and continued to kind of get as far as we could.
Isn't that bridge wide enough that we could make it part of the sidewalk? Is there some reason why we can't do that?
Well, there's some stormwater runoff issues and then some ADA issues that we have to take into consideration. Don, you want to speak on this? That's kind of your baby project.
Hi. Oh, I'm not that tall. We stopped right at where the bridge needs to go, so there is no bridge at the moment, and it's right at the end of First Street. So we have all that water that comes down Pecan, down Eastern, comes straight down First Street. So when we get more than an inch of rain at a time, that water can get 2-3 feet high going down there. So it needs to be storm drain put in, something. There's a sewer line right there. There's a water line right there. it's probably gonna cost more than the $40,000 we had left in the budget at the time. So we moved over to 4th Street and started working on that end of it. You're welcome.
Any other questions, council? Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4B, review and discuss the February 2024 financials.
Mayor, if I may, I believe Charles has been feeling a little bit under the weather. He just stepped out, so
Okay,
would you mind if we come back to that if he
no
can
problem.
make it back in? Thank you.
Agenda item number 4C, review and discuss updates on ARPA funds.
The right slide.
I don't have anything in my packet. Is that for you, Mr. Batla, to present?
Yes. Yeah, now, on the ARPA funds. Let's go ahead and advance. Okay, we just received these numbers today. We wanted to get an accurate accounting on these, so and advance one more. So, as you can see, this is kind of a breakdown of the total expenditures, and I can get you a copy of this, but we have 479 on well number 7. That's the complete rehab of that well. Our generator, electric, and SCADA work for all our critical infrastructure needs on that side was 872. The Old Betsy sewer line project, which we just awarded, was 160,000. The water line project, that we call Pleasant Meadows water line project, was 234,000. Some sewer improvements that we did early on initially were 32,000 and some change, and then some live streaming. So when you add all those up, okay, you can see our initial allocation was 1.629 million. You see our expenditures are actually a little bit over that, 1.791 million, shows 4% over. The explanation for that is that we had some bond proceeds from a previous project that we still had available to help bridge that gap. And we estimated on the high side on one of the projects that we estimate that'll come in about $50,000 lower, which will bring us right on target. So basically all of those ARPA funds have been earmarked, executed, and are moving forward. So any questions on that?
Any questions, council?
I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Bells.
Can you enlighten us a little bit more about unlucky well number 7?
Yes, well number 7. So we are waiting on the filter cartridge, and once that filter cartridge gets here, we've paid for it. Once we receive it, it's a matter of installing it. We'll probably flush that well for several days and then install that water filter, and I think we'll have some really good water, and that'll be a good well, about 200 gallons per minute, which equals an extra 10-something million gallons a year to our system. So I know it's been quite the trial to get that thing up and running, but when you look at the, we were just talking about this today, when you look at the long-term water sales of that 10 million gallons a year over time, it'll be a great investment, money well spent, even at that price to get that thing up. And again, I know it's been a long road, but we're getting very, very close. One component left. So.
At least we hope. Cross fingers.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Foster? Go ahead. That was your question, too? Okay. Any other questions, council? Okay, council, we have our financial report that's in front of us. It was not in our packet. I would like to suggest that we just go ahead and read this, and if we have any questions, we send an email into the city, to the finance department. I understand Mr. Williams had a loss in his family, and his mother passed away, and I would like us to go ahead and skip the reading of this report by him and just have us keep it in our packets, if that's okay. Everybody agree? Thank you, sir. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 4D, review and discuss updates on open development projects. We do have a sheet in our packet on this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I threw a few slides together, so hopefully you can see those. We have many projects in the works right now, including subdivisions, commercial projects, and some individual single-family homes that are going on. The subdivisions, which are shown on this map here, are Bristol Oaks Phase 1 and 2, Ashton Home Place Phase 1 and 2 is right across the street, Sunset Ridge Phase 1, the Canyons Phase 1, and Stonehurst. And the map kind of gives the location of those, and probably over the next 5 to 10 years, some of those are 300 home developments each. So as far as Bristol Oaks goes, that's kind of a overhead aerial shot off our map system. You can kind of see where the streets and the homes are. Bristol Oaks was started a few years ago and is almost built out. Phase 1 consisted of 86 lots, but all but 8 are completed or under construction. And Phase 2 had 23 lots, all but 1 are completed or under construction. So that subdivision is almost all built out. As far as Ashton Home Place, this is kind of the overhead, and you can kind of see the streets on there, where the streets are right now. This is from our maps, but they're a little out of date, a few days. But anyways, Ashton Home Place, Phase 1 will have 122 lots. Phase 2, which is across the street, will have 35 lots. Civil plans are basically completed, and this last Monday, 3/11/2024, we did a pre-final walkthrough with the developers, and that's the little piece of paper that looks like this from Jacob and Martin. That's the punch list of that entire development. There's only 21 items, which is really not bad. It is not our water, so JSUD did theirs later that afternoon with the contractors. I'm not sure how that went. But I did have our fire department go out and make sure that all the hydrants were in the correct location and things of that nature. Let's see, where did I leave off? Sunset Ridge. Phase 1 will be 125 lots, and Sunset Ridge is down there kind of Old Betsy and Business 67. The civils are under construction with about 95% of the water, sewer, and storm drains completed. The next step will be the streets. So they're pretty, I'd say within a couple of weeks, they're gonna start grading the streets and get them all back in order, and hopefully they'll start paving those pretty quick. So that one's moving along pretty good. They're also waiting on TxDOT's approval of where they turn into that subdivision to see if they actually need a deceleration lane or not. Then we move on to the canyons. I didn't have a good aerial shot other than a big open field, but the canyons is kind of on Highway 67, right between the high school and the RV park. And this is almost all 3 phases, but Phase 1 on the canyons will be 120 lots. The deceleration lane is complete, and they pretty much have all those lots in Phase 1 kind of laid out right now. And so probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, they'll actually start working on their civil plans, the water, sewer, and storm drains. So that one's moving along.
Are we still calling it the Canyons even though they have new owners?
Yes,
Okay,
that's the way it's been platted and not the
okay.
street
It's been
name.
platted under that name.
Yes. And then, this is Stonehurst, which is a development that's gonna be right back here. It consists of 115 lots. The owner, I actually just spoke to the other day, is trying to sell the whole development as a package. And I spoke to them on some questions and clarifications on what type of homes can be built and what type of lots or size homes on those lots. So as you can see, there's still a lot going on. And as far as all subs goes, I don't think I had any more slides. That was it. Civil plans are being designed. The preliminary plat zoning requests have been approved. We're waiting on TxDOT approval of driveways and possible turn lanes. Tractor supplies, civil plans are being finalized and reviews. Preliminary plat has been approved, waiting on TxDOT for their driveway location and a traffic study, which is underway. And then we have a 10,000 square foot metal building that's under construction for a large truck, trailer, bus, body repair shop going in on Highway 67 across from the high school. They're just about ready to start going vertical with that building. Any questions?
So how far away are we from getting some of these businesses? People have asked on Facebook, Allsups, Tractor Supply, are we a year out? When do we expect them to actually,
Part of it, it depends on TxDOT. That's some of the issue. It could be fairly quick. As far as Allsups goes, the majority, I think, of their civil plans are done. They're just trying to finalize everything. So once they get it turned into us, you're looking at a couple of weeks of back and forth reviewing, things of that nature, and then maybe another month of breaking ground.
so by 2025, maybe next year?
Hopefully it would be sooner, but, you know, there's a lot of variables. It's hard to say.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Martin?
You said behind here, they're gonna build how many houses?
115 lots, I believe it is what was platted and approved.
What are we gonna do about the streets and all that back here?
What streets?
Back here, the county, that's a county road, I guess, ain't it?
County road leading to it, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just wondering, man. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Martin? All right, thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do not have a public hearing tonight, so we can omit agenda item number 5 and move on to agenda item number 6, consent agenda. We have 2 sets of city council minutes to adopt, and I believe you guys received this week an email, one with some changes to it. So if you make a motion for the consent agenda item, we will be adopting the one with the changes. Does anybody have any desire to remove anything at this time from the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with corrections as presented by staff. Oh, with correction. I should have read the second one.
Second.
Is that Foster? Okay. We have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda as presented. Let's see. Make a motion to approve the city council meeting minutes. Is that what you wanted to say, Ms. Beeson, the second one? With any corrections discussed for the meeting dates of February 29, 2024 and March 7, 2024. Made by Beeson, second by Foster. All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Motion is carried. Agenda item number 7, review, discuss, consider, and take possible action regarding A, review, discuss, and consider possible action on the city attorney's recommendations for the city charter. All right, council, in your packet, you have several sections that the city attorney has reviewed about the city charter. Would anybody like to discuss any particular section? The first section is, I'll just go ahead and give a little excerpt for the people that aren't following along. The first section that he discusses is 3.03 in the city charter, where it talks about mayor and mayor pro tem. And the city attorney's recommendation is that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The first section is about change of boundaries.
Am I reading something wrong? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, I skipped that section. Okay, section 1.04, change of boundaries. The city attorney is making a recommendation, since involuntary annexation is no longer permitted under state law, that any references in the city charter to involuntary annexation should be deleted. So that's the first one. That one seems pretty straightforward. Anybody have any questions on that one? The second one that he's recommending a change in is section 3.03, mayor and mayor pro tem. And from reading through his comments, since this has come up a couple of times, we've discussed this, he's recommending that we add the line, the mayor pro tem shall retain the right to vote as a council member, in line with what other cities have done. And I think that's a good line to add. I don't see any problem with that one either. And then section 3.05, prohibitions, subsection C, interference and administrative matters. his comment here is, this is the instance where I served as interim city manager last year. So he's making the recommendation that we change the charter so that in the future, the mayor does not serve as an interim city manager and another employee is appointed at that time in the absence of a city manager. Anybody have any questions on that one? Yes, sir?
I just wanted to make a little adjustment to that under section C.
Okay,
In the part that's italicized, it says, in the event of an emergency and in the absence of the city manager, the mayor or other city council appointed designee will assume the responsibility. I'm gonna take out the word mayor and just say a city council appointed designee.
okay,
I'd also like to have the word untimely in there, because what if this, and then also we got this part from the city of Allen, which I thought was good, but what about the untimely absence of our city manager? Then we don't have any recourse to do then, because he has to appoint someone to fill that position. So I'd like to put the word untimely absence of the city manager. The city council will appoint a designee to assume the responsibility. Does that make sense?
okay. Are you assuming that the city manager is not working for the city?
I'm assuming an untimely, heaven forbid.
I know that sounds morbid.
But otherwise, we're going to be swinging because we don't have any recourse if he hasn't.
Well, that would be covered under in the event of an emergency and in the absence of a city manager. That would be untimely. Then the city council appointed designee will assume the responsibility.
But if you took the part from Allen, though, it doesn't have that in there. That's why I wanted to make sure we kept the part that we have about the italicized part, just taking out the word mayor.
Okay? And again, we're just kind of reviewing this because this will still go to a committee, and then the committee will still bring back recommendations to the council, and then it still goes before the voters for a vote. So we're just discussing some of the recommendations that the attorney has made.
I think the intent of the original charter revision part that's highlighted there says, in the event of an emergency and in the absence of the city manager. I don't think that's assuming the city manager is, indisposed. I think it's something like a tornado hits, all right, and the city manager can't be reached, or the city manager is on vacation, I mean, who runs the show in the event of that emergency? Now, I don't think it's designed to address, the manager is recuperating from surgery or is taking a sabbatical or something like that. I mean, there's other things. I think at least the original charter provisions, I was around when we crafted it, no reason I know, in the original discussion of the charter committee, it was, what happens if a tornado hits or, a terrible flood or gas tanker, what was something just totally catastrophic and can't reach the city manager, but someone has to make the decision right here and right now. It's mission critical. That was what that was intended to address. Not so much how do we handle it, next day, next week, or something like that. So it may be two different things. I mean, what the Allen provision is, that seems to be more, the manager's just not here. They quit. Are they not? Are they just completely unavailable or something? So yeah, I don't think Pat's suggesting change that section where it has the italics. I mean, did he say anything about that? Yeah, I think he's talking about adding a section. I think that one section will still be in there, like if you have a catastrophic emergency and you can't get the city manager, then the mayor or somebody else can assume that responsibility. But if it's a more permanent absence of the city manager, then that section that the Allen charter would allow you to have a process to have a staff member do that, because if you have a council member or mayor or council member do it, puts them in a conflict, because they're the head of the legislative body and they're the head of the executive body, and under the branches of government, you've got to have in branches of government, you got to have co-equal branches or whatever. So anyway, I think there's two different issues that are addressed. One of them, then it's italics there. I think that is just designed to deal with unexpected catastrophic emergency on the spot. What do you do? And of course, under state law, the mayor is already the emergency management coordinator. He or she's delegated that responsibility from the governor. You saw that during COVID, a lot of mayors entering orders and stuff, or during the winter storms. So I think what we have in the charter right now is pretty much consistent with that. I think what Pat's suggesting is in instances when you just have a vacancy in the city manager's position or an extended vacancy, that there's a process to appoint a staff member to run the ship versus a council member.
Well, maybe we should ask Pat what his intention was meant there. What his wording, what he intended for it to be. So, good question.
And it may be something just to circle back with Pat and just make sure, because I could be reading it differently, but I know what this section was originally intended to do, because that was part of the charter committee that came up with it.
Yeah. Okay, the next section was on section 3.06, vacancies and forfeiture of office. And he's addressing sections 3 and 4, I believe, about the failure to attend 3 consecutive regular meetings of the city council without prior consent of the mayor, and fails to attend 4 regular council meetings during any one quarter. And he says he's addressing potential forfeiture of office in the event of a city council member or the mayor failing to attend city council meetings. The provision does not address, he says, excused absences for either the mayor or the council. The only excuse is the mayor may give prior consent, but what if the mayor is absent for 3 consecutive meetings or more? Can the mayor consent to missing those meetings? So some charters, he says, provide for the council's authorized excuses. For example, fails to attend 3 consecutive regular meetings without being excused by the council. This failure to provide for excused absences is mitigated by paragraph C, which gives the council the final say in matters involving forfeiture of office. To me, that one's still kind of covered, because like you say, he already has C in there that says that they can determine whether they failed to attend and they weren't excused and there was no reason for it, as if they were just no-shows. I don't think we've ever had any issue with that coming up so far. Usually everybody reports when they're gonna miss a meeting, whether they're on vacation, sick, or a business trip. Any questions on that section, council? The next section is talking about go ahead.
I think what he's trying to do is, what if the mayor is a no-show for 3? I think that's his question.
And that hasn't happened either.
It may not always have you as a mayor, though.
There may be a tweak of a word that can be done then.
Well, you could just change it to fail to attend 3 consecutive regular meetings without consent of the council. The problem with prior consent, I mean, that's fine if you know somebody's not gonna be here, but if they, they have an emergency and they don't show up for council, and then you say, well, you don't know what their situation is, so you're not gonna give them prior consent. It seems to me that if the goal is to excuse somebody that missed 3 meetings, they have a reason that, I'm not sure why it needs to be prior. Why couldn't it be, during the last of the 3 meetings? And the council says those are significant, it's a significant excuse, but, the prior could just be a problem too, because that means you have to know in advance the person's situation, and you may not know their situation until after they didn't show up, and somebody talks to them the next morning and say, why weren't you here? Well, I didn't know that, so I couldn't excuse it because it wasn't prior. So I would think what you might do is just says fail to extend 3 consecutive regular meetings of city council without consent of the council,
Okay,
and just,
change number 3.
yeah, and that number 3, that would, and that's consistent with, I think, what Pat's saying that a lot of other folks have. It's basically, it's just the council gets to decide that.
We did have something similar come up where we did know in advance, and we had a council member that was having health issues, and the previous mayor did give him consent to miss as many meetings as he needed, even if it was in excess of 3 because of his health issues. And we had no problem with that as a council. Okay, the next section, section 3.
Question about the consent.
Yeah.
So we are talking about, based on the case that we had last time with one of our council members because of health issues, when we are talking about consent, does it mean that just the mayor having the knowledge of the situation, and then right now we're having the city secretary is sending all, or the city manager, whoever is working with the city manager, is sending some notification through emails. Does that allow, does that allow the consent of agenda to be as an option, or we have to vote for it and say we allow them to be absent more than three consecutive meetings?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it's not a self-enforcing thing. It's not like 3 meetings and you're out, because the next section of the charter says the city council shall be the final judge. So whether or not, you know, somebody, I mean, if somebody misses 4 meetings and nobody, and nobody even thinks to talk about it, if the council doesn't take an action on it, then nothing happens. But I think this talks about, and if I'm understanding your question correctly, I mean, are you asking whether or not each absence has to be excused, or?
We are saying with the consent of the council, which means the council has to be aware of it.
Yes.
Either in agreement, which means it has to be in an open meeting for you not to violate the quorum thing.
Right, well, I mean,
So-
the assumption is that the council member or the mayor who's missed a meeting or have a meeting will get word to the staff, probably to the city manager, and say, here's what's going on. And if it's something that they don't want it necessarily spread out, I mean, we have some, maybe it's something, maybe a very personal nature, and you don't want it spread among the public, then the manager could individually tell you what it is. Y'all don't have to, in other words, there's no requirement that you divulge that I'm excusing council member A because they're having, you know, whatever, some kind of optional surgery, getting a nose job, whatever it is. You don't have to do that. So I mean, I think the council needs to be aware, but I don't think it has to be part of the public record.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next section, 3.08, meetings of the city council, subsection C. This is talking about the special meetings that we've had come up, and we did adopt rules of order and procedure that say that it takes now just 2 city council members in order to call a special meeting instead of 4 because of the violation of the possible quorum. So we're trying to change the charter to say a lesser number than 4. And of course, I would probably recommend the 2 since we've already adopted that under the rules of procedures.
And I'll point out to council that the last charter election, and I don't think you've had one since I was here, there was a proposition to change that from 4 to 2. It was the only proposition that didn't pass, but I think it wasn't explained to it wasn't explained to the public that the reason we were asking to change it was not because we were trying to necessarily make it easier to do a special meeting. We wanted to bring it in compliance with the law. So assuming that the Charter Commission goes with this and it's out there, I would recommend that as part of the outreach that the public be made aware of the reason behind it, because it failed last time, and I suspect simply because the public wasn't aware the change was designed to bring us into conformance with the law. They probably assumed that it was just, you know, trying to make it easier for 2 renegade council members to call a special meeting or something like that, which wasn't the reason for the suggestion the first time around either.
Okay, the next section is 5.01, city manager. He's talking about language, the highlighted language that says no director or head of any administrative department, however, shall be appointed or removed without prior notice and consultation of the city council, as being ambiguous as to the city council's role in the appointment and/or removal of department heads. It does not give the council the right to disapprove or approve the appointment or removal of a department head. It might be beneficial to amend this provision to clarify the roles of the city manager and the city council as to the appointment and/or removal of department heads. I have a little issue with this. I don't think that the city council should have the right to dictate who the city manager hires and fires. And that's what the general law cities do, but under home rule, we typically we are a council manager form of government. Therefore, he has the right to choose. We don't want to make him work with a police chief that he doesn't like or a fire chief that he doesn't like, just because we like him and he's a friend of ours. So,
I mean, you're correct, Mayor. I mean, the true council manager form of government, councils typically hire city managers, city lawyers, city judges, sometimes city prosecutors. Sometimes city secretaries are hired directly and report to the council instead of, and I don't remember how the charter reads here, but I remember the last time we went about that, I had made that suggestion in the charter committee, and very similar to what Pat said, it kind of, it undermines the council manager form of government to have council basically having say, whatever that say is, which is kind of unclear here as to who this man hires or who this man fires. I've had some charters that say that city manager, in home rule cities, that city managers can't even suspend, department heads without council consent. It's like, well, I mean, that, you find some director of the department, snorting cocaine in the bathroom and you can't send them home. You got to wait to the next council meeting. So, I mean, there's real limitations on stuff like that. So, and that's the same thing here. It's like, you can't be removed without prior notice and consultation. Well, you can't consult the city council except in a meeting. You can't consult with them any other way. So the same kind of thing there. It says you couldn't have anybody appointed removed. I mean, if he caught somebody hypothetically, stealing cash, out of the drawer or something like that, where everybody says, oh, you fire that person. You wouldn't be able to fire that person. He would have the power, I guess, to suspend that person, send them home without pay or whatever until the council could get together again. But now, I mean, I agree with you, Mayor. The true council manager form of government envisions that the council appoints a manager. The manager oversees everybody below that. And really, the same way you've got charter provisions that say you're not to interfere in the manager's decisions or whatever. So, it's kind of a little inconsistent to say you can't interfere with how he does his job, except when his job is hiring or firing.
yeah.
And then we can interfere. So, and that's just a policy decision. But I'll be honest with you, I see a lot of home rule charters that have this kind of language, particularly when they're not that far removed from having been a general law city where that's the way things were done. And then you become a home rule city, but sometimes it takes you a while to grow into that real home rule status and have a true professional city manager type of government. So if you wanted to have that true type of government, you would just take that, you would just take out that sentence in bold completely, just strike it out.
Yeah.
But if it's still the council's desire to have some knowledge or maybe not decision-making, but just some influence in who department heads are hired or fired, then I agree with Pat. This doesn't really give a lot of clarification about how does that take place? What does that mean? Does that mean that before he does it, he's got to consult with you? Does that mean that after he does it, he's got to bring it to your attention and tell you what he did? And that, I think, is what Pat is trying to say, that if you were to keep that section, it's still unclear as to how it's to be administered, and he's suggesting that you tighten it up somehow.
Yeah. Ms. Beeson, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say basically what he said. I think the key word here is consultation. It's not that we have to put it to a vote to approve or disapprove what the city manager's doing. Maybe it's more just for informative, to let the council know what he's doing, or he or she.
And that's what's happening now. That's already happening, so. So that section to me doesn't really need to be changed, maybe just like I say, tweaked a little bit. If we just want to say for him to give us notice and consultation, but not necessarily for us to object to what he's doing. This is his team and he's running it, so we don't really work here, so we don't have anything to do with it. Yes, Mr. Johnson?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. We hired him to do a job. And if he wants to fire somebody for something, or if he wants to fire anybody, he shouldn't have to come to us. He's a city manager.
Exactly.
If they're
I agree.
going wrong, I don't think he's gonna fire anybody because he don't like them, because
Yeah.
he don't seem like that kind of guy. But
And as a practical matter, I mean, experienced city managers, typically, unless it's an emergency, they're not gonna fire a department head probably without having an executive session and telling the council, look, I've got a problem with this person. I want you to know what I'm doing. I'm gonna let them go, it's kind of like speak now or hold your peace. As a practical matter, these things take place. But when they're in the charter, then conceivably, you know, the fear is he could fire somebody, and then somebody comes back and their lawyer makes some attack and says, well, my guy was never really fired because you didn't follow the charter exactly. You didn't really consult with this person. You didn't do that. You didn't do it before. I mean, you fired him, then you came and talked to counsel afterwards and make an argument in front of a judge that the city did not follow its own charter, judge. Therefore, they couldn't fire this guy. And then the judge orders them reinstated with back pay and attorney's fees, and then you're stuck with having them here again, and then you can go through the process correctly to fire them. But I've seen that happen a couple of times where you had imprecise language in terms of hiring and firing department heads because it required some kind of consultation with the council, and it was unclear what that meant, and then that's just something that, you know, clever lawyers use when they're writing you a letter saying, I'll agree to pay me X amount of money, I'll agree not to sue you. And here's one of the many grounds I want to sue you under is, you know, I think you did it because I was because of my age or because of my political expression, or I was a whistleblower, and you didn't follow the charter. So it's just one more thing for somebody to throw in there when they're trying to get back on the job.
Okay, but
Mr. Easley wanted to speak.
I believe that the hang-up on the word prior is the biggest concern with that phrase. Is prior insinuates that he has to ask us first. So maybe we need a better word than prior
So
consultation.
we could just, maybe we could just say without consultation of the city council
Yeah,
and take out the prior notice of. Yes, Mr.
prior
Foster?
notice. I'm good.
Well, I think we need, the appointed part also bothers me. I mean, I can understand the removing them, that we would need to be notified, but as far as we trust him to appoint who he deems fit, so I think we should take out the word appoint as well, but keep remove.
Yeah, I'm not sure removing prior makes a difference. It is, because it says no director or head of department shall be appointed or removed. I mean, you take out prior, it says can't be removed without consultation of the city council. Well, if you can't do something without consultation, then that means you have to have the consultation before you do it, right? I mean, otherwise, I don't think it makes a sense to say no director or head of administrative department shall be appointed or removed without consultation.
Let's just
So, but by the time you do the consultation, they've already been appointed or removed, so,
let's just make it shall be removed without notice to the city council. Because we should know if something's happened immediately, but we don't have to be consulted. He could just say, hey, I caught it. Yeah, and this is what I did.
But to fire somebody, it's easy to fire somebody without them coming back if you paperwork them. If you know what you're doing, you shouldn't have an issue if they're doing messing up. That's why they have paper, trail paper. You know, if they're doing their job, the leaders, then there shouldn't be a problem with being fired. If they're doing their write-ups and all that, send them home for 3 days and let them think about it. That's how most city does it, or state does it.
Oh, Mayor, you can go ahead.
Go ahead.
City attorney. You want to speak, the city attorney? The attorney. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, I also see some problems with here because we are having shall, which is, he has to, she has to do that. And if they don't do that, that's a ground for termination because they have just violated the charter. So, and having department heads, of course, we don't say that the council should be biased. That's not what we should be able to encourage. We should be neutral because the city council, a city manager system, two systems that should run independently, but with consultation and also notices to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So if you are going to give the city manager the power to run the departments and all the employees that work under him, I think this restraint is a little bit kind of restrictive. And it might create instability in his own kind of, system where he might have a problem that somebody, you can even see clearly this person, there's an action that's needed for this department to be fixed. But he can't, because if he does that, the 4 council members might get rid of him. So he's under pressure not to act. But when it comes to another department, because the council doesn't like maybe that person, they say, just go ahead and, move on. Now you have created a situation where one can clearly prove that so-and-so did this and this and this, you never did anything for him. But me, I just did this little itty-bitty thing, and you just used as an excuse to terminate me. So you just create an unstable system by saying shall before removing or whatever, so he's kind of constrained. So I think giving the city manager the power, if you trust him to do the job, let him do the job. So this consultation shall and other stuff, I think it creates a problem, a big problem for a small city like Keene. Big city can weather that, but with this little budget, I don't think so.
Well, I think the verbiage that we settled on was no director or head of any administrative department, however, shall be removed without notice of the city council. We're not tying his hands at all.
In other words, what you're saying is that the city manager can do something, but after the fact, he needs to let you know that he's done it. Or before, yeah. You can just say, without notice. Yeah, and part of the problem is it says appointed and removed. We're kind of talking about that as being hiring and firing, but it's not necessarily that. And hypothetically, if the manager said, I'm going to create some cities have a director of public safety, and the police chief and the fire chief both report to them. And if he said, okay, I'm going to make the fire chief, or I'll make the police chief promote them to director of public safety. Well, he couldn't even do that promotion, without giving you notice. Or if, somebody, let's say they're director of public works and they're just struggling in their job and they decide to bring somebody in from the outside with more experience, make that person director of public works, and take the director of public works and make them assistant director of public works, they would also need, so if all you're saying is you just want to be notified on it, then that's fine. But like I say, as a practical matter, it would be a rare city manager indeed who would do these kind of things without routinely letting having that in the charter. I'm not sure it gains you anything. It's like, you really think a city manager is going to secretly promote or demote or something and then not tell you folks? So, you can have it in there, but like the mayor said, it really still is inconsistent with the true concept of council manager form of government. And what you can say is that, all right, you hire and fire, you won't. Our expectation of you as a council is that you'll let us know what you're doing and when you're doing it, so that we can be, that we don't, when the constituents call us, we know that we don't want to hear it from social media that somebody got let go. And like I said, that's never really a problem. So, if I was just strictly viewing this as trying to have clarity in government, I'd say you just strike that completely and just say manager hires and fires, notice and all that kind of stuff. That is the normal expectation. If you have a city manager that doesn't let you know what's going on, that shows up in the city manager's evaluation, maybe that he or she's not going to be your manager much longer.
Yes, Mr. Johnson?
We had, for example, we had somebody that let somebody go. I won't give names or anything like that. 2 people at a council meeting, section closing, telling us what was going on in line. Remember that? Just here 6 months ago, they let go. I don't want to say about what, but he came to us and another one when they let go of somebody. And I thought that was pretty neat. They came to council and was telling them why they were letting him go. And I thought it was pretty neat that they did that.
And what you could say, the wording, you could kind of flip it and just basically just say something like, the city council shall be notified anytime a director or head of an administrative department is appointed or removed. Or something like that. That way it doesn't make it sound like it has to happen before. What we're talking about is like, he gets to appoint and remove. You want to be notified of it. And it doesn't, it's not notified before. If he wants to bring it to you before, it's up to him. But basically, all the charter will require that once he makes an action like that, he'll let everybody know.
I think it's like you just said, if he let us know, it would be good. And I think he would do that. They have done that in the past.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the next section, 5.01, city manager. He just says this is the same issue addressed in item 3 above, where he was talking about in the absence or disability of the city manager, the mayor or other city council appointed designee will perform the duties of the office with the approval of the city council. So it's just understanding what that means as far as if that's a permanent absence, if we're talking about a temporary absence, who's going to perform the duties of the office?
Well, we'll just strike the word mayor, and then we've got it.
Yeah, not literally, right?
Word.
Just checking. Okay, the next section, he has a 6.16 borrowing. He says that this provision, talking about how the issuance of certificates, a petition signed by 15% of the registered voters is actually in conflict right now with state law, section 271.049 of the local government code. And he said that provides that a petition signed by 5% of the registered voters of the city can force an election. So he says this provision should be amended to conform to state law. So the 15 should be changed to 5.
Yeah, I mean, making that change would help. You know, the problem with that thing is, and when I do charter, let's say it's like, anytime you try to set out, you know, the first section says you gotta do it in accordance with the laws of the state of Texas. Then the next sections try to tell you what those things are. Well, they change over time. I mean, you could just say, have it say, the city shall have the power to issue certificates of obligation in accordance with the laws of the state of Texas, period. You don't
Yeah.
need anything else because
need to put the actual
the
percentage.
number of signers for a petition, that changes when the legislature changes. You know, the process changes when the legislature changes, so you always run the risk of when you put details like this of how you're going to follow the law by stating what the law is, when the law changes, and all of a sudden your charter's
Charter's not working.
in fact. So, you know, I mean, one thing you might just do is just scratch everything other than that first sentence. Because the state law governs all those things.
Mayor?
Okay, so keep the first sentence you said and scratch everything after?
Yeah, I mean, that's one option.
Is one option? Okay, yes, sir. Ms. Patlow?
It's off topic. Some of our viewers are having a hard time hearing. Can you please make sure everybody's speaking into the mic and the mic is on?
Talk loud, all right.
Sorry, I'm under the weather. I went Easter egg hunting in the rain last weekend. I'm still recovering.
But my thought is you just keep that first sentence,
Keep the first sentence and maybe scrap everything else would be one recommendation.
because that's already set forth in state law.
Okay. All right, the next section is section 10.09, form of ballots, subsections B and C. And he believes, according to his comment, it appears that the heading B, repeal, should be B, referendum, and C, referendum, should be C, recall. This wording should be amended to avoid confusion.
Yeah, I agree, C ought to be recall, that's what it talks about. You know,
Okay.
B, I mean,
He's talking about repeal and B.
B talks about, I mean, you could change it to referendum. Referendum is the process by which you repeal an ordinance.
Okay,
But since it already says ordinances being considered for repeal, it doesn't bother me to keep Bill saying repeal, because that's what we're talking about, repealing
Okay.
ordinances. But definitely C needs to be recall, but
Needs to
that's
be
the section that talks
Okay.
about recalling people.
okay.
So, I mean, you could change B, but I don't really think you need to, but I do think you need to change C to recall.
Okay. Okay, the next section is section 10.07, certification of petitions and presentations to the city council, subsection A, and section 10.11, limitations and restrictions, subsection A. Okay, so this came up last year when we had some people file petitioner committee affidavits. So what occurred is we had myself and 3 members of council have petition committee affidavits filed against us, which is basically a committee of 20 people that say that they are going to proceed with trying to recall that member. And then they fill out an affidavit, and then they have 30 days to collect a certain number of voters, 30% that voted in the last election, to do that. And at the end of the 30 days, they turn in that petition. And at that point, that is when the petition for recall is presented to the city secretary, and the city secretary then certifies that as sufficient or insufficient. So my question that came up at this last time was I was under 2 different petition committees simultaneously practically, one of them over 30 days, and 3 days later, a second one was filed against me 3 days later by the same petitioner, who then got another 30 days. But at the end of both of those periods of time, those 30 days, nothing was turned in to the city secretary. So I felt like our charter was not clear, and the city secretary should have, at that point, deemed the petition recall insufficient, which would mean then another petition couldn't start within 6 months. Mr. Chesser had a different interpretation of it, and I understand what his interpretation is he said there's a petitioner's committee and then there's a petition recall, and that they are 2 separate items, and that the recall is what got turned in at the end of the 30 days, and since nothing turned in, it was like nothing ever happened. So according to Mr. Chesser, I was never recalled, and nor were 3 council members ever recalled, because nothing ever got turned in. No signatures were ever turned in at the end of 30 days. So technically, under the law and under what his interpretation is of the charter, we weren't recalled. So we're looking at trying to clean that up to make that more clear, because the wording I was going by is when they filled out that affidavit, it gave them a specific date that said the petition had to be returned by that date. And it said that the recall petition, which is what they're going to return in, that 30% of the voters, shall be filed against any official. And so it was supposed to be shall filed to the city secretary. I was using the wording that shall says it has to be filed. Therefore, if nothing was turned in, then that means 0 was filed, and 0 is still a number. So I said you shouldn't be able to have to turn in another one simultaneously the very next month, 3 days later, and keep going month after month. Did not seem to be in the spirit of the law, of state law, that's what we're supposed to be recalled, over and over again until they get it right, until they get the right number to turn in. So that's what we're looking at here. I don't quite understand Mr. Chesser's recommendation. When this came up last year, he actually gave me a different recommendation and told me that the way to fix this is to just add a line into our recall petition paragraph and just say that if no signatures are turned in by the end of the 30-day period, that the city secretary shall deem the petition insufficient. And then that would then stop the clock and say, okay, now you can't be recalled for 6 more months under state law.
Yeah, I read Pat saying he's not really making, he says what you have now is workable. It's just a question of interpretation. But right
Yeah.
now, like a lot of home rule cities, there's a 2-step process. You start with an affidavit of a committee, and that basically gets you the right then to circulate the petition, which meets those requirements, and it sets forth the dates or whatever. What Pat's saying is that you could do away with that affidavit requirement and just have the petition, but I will tell you, most places do have the 2-step process because it's designed to put it on the radar, because
If you do away with the petition, then how do you start the clock and say you've got 30 days to do
You gotta have
it?
the petition.
And how do people know then that it's started and that it's out there, that people are collecting signatures on
Now,
it?
you have to have the petitioners committee, that has to be authorized, and that lets you know that the people who are out trying to get somebody to sign it are part of that committee and authorized to do it. But no, the petition, you can do away with the affidavit requirement, but you can't do it at the petition, because the petition is what triggers the recall. You gotta make sure it's got, you know, sufficient number of signatures, and those signatures have to be verified, they have to meet the provisions of the election code in terms of what type of information that you have on, you can't just have somebody just write their name on it. It's gotta have their address, or the voter registration number, or precinct number, and there's a number of requirements that state law requires for any kind of petition, so, and that's why, and it had to be turned in time, I mean, because you're talking about doing something on an election too. So the part of the process with the affidavit, with the committee, is to give you time to figure, okay, assuming this all happens, is it gonna make this election cycle? Because you only get to do it, in, November or May now. So, yeah, I don't think he's really suggesting that it be changed unless he says you just want to simplify it. He didn't really have any suggested for there. I mean, if that was the case, you would probably have to have your charter committee, tasked with looking at what other cities have done to try to come up with some of their kind of system. But like I said, he's just saying he thinks what you have now is workable. He's given an interpretation of it. If for some reason you think it's too complex, you could go to a simplified process, but he doesn't really have a suggestion for what that process would be.
It is a little complex.
I'd like to
Mayor.
make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to move this forward to the Charter Committee with the minor changes that we've made tonight. And that's the end of the motion. But this will allow the Charter Committee to make the discussions that we've made and come back to us with a recommendation.
Second.
All right, let me see if I have your motion correctly. I make a motion to move this item forward, I guess we'd say, to the Charter Commission with changes discussed, and then return to council.
Yes.
And do we have the Charter Commission established yet? Not yet. Okay. So we're going to move it forward to the next stage of selecting a Charter Commission then, to move it forward then. Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Bells and a second by Easley. Correct, sir? Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Those abstain?
I abstain. I had something to say, but
Okay, go ahead,
you know what?
before I call it.
It's already done.
Okay, motion is carried. Goot will abstain. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, I wasn't able to recognize you. We already had a motion and a second on the floor. I just hadn't read it yet. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 8, executive session. We do have an executive session scheduled tonight. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the City Council may convene into executive session at any time during the meeting that a need arises for the City Council to seek advice from the City Attorney as to any posted item and by the following authority. A, Section 551.072, deliberations about real property. Deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Okay, council, we adopted rules of order and procedure that actually said that only city council members have a right to attend an executive session, and this one actually doesn't list, we don't actually have any on here as to who's attending, so I need to find out from the council who you would like to attend. At the last time that we talked about this same deliberation, we had Mr. Martin present in executive session, we had Mr. Batla present in executive session, and we had the city attorney present in executive session. Do you have anybody else, council, that you would like to be present in executive session, or any objections to those three?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a request. If anybody has one, you can go ahead. So, according to Open Meeting Act, they do specify, which some of us have the verbiage. It does say who may attend closed meeting, and And it does specify, yes, only members of the government body have a right to attend. It's a given right for any government body. So according to Texas Attorney General's opinion number, that's JM-6, that's 1983, I can quote, "A government body has discretion to include in an executive session officers and employees of the government body whose participation is necessary to the matter under consideration without violating the Open Meeting Act." So I'm going to make a request based on the subject matter. So I request my fellow council members, I'm making a simple request based on the Attorney General's opinion, that's number JM-6, 1983, to ask the city manager, our city manager, to request our, I know our fire chief is here, is not here, so I don't know who might be here from the fire department, and the police chief in executive session to provide assistance with some of the questions that I have regarding the matter being addressed so that I can vote for the resolution in public.
So what are you saying? I don't understand what you're trying to say, sir.
Oh, do you want me to repeat?
That you want the chief to come back there? What?
No. Maybe I can. Did you hear what I said? I said we are allowed as a council, if you have, do you want me to read the opinion from the Attorney General?
No, I heard that, but I'm not understanding what you want out of it.
Okay, so I'm saying, I'm making a simple request based on the Attorney General's opinion, that's JM-6, 1983, to ask our city manager to request any chief, fire chief, or somebody from the fire department, and the police chief in executive session to provide assistance with some of the questions that I have as a council member regarding the matter being addressed, the one that we are going to talk about in executive, to assist me with some questions that I have regarding the matter being addressed so that I can vote. When we come out, we do vote. So, but the general opinion, the Attorney General's opinion does allow city employees, if they can be able to assist with the matter under consideration. So it's not somebody's breaking a law. I'm just making a request. I don't know if that's okay.
Mr. Bella?
The fire chief is at a training conference, but I can probably field most of those questions on the fire side.
Okay.
Okay,
Or I can get you the answer. So.
okay. So I might then ask the police chief also with that.
To allow who, I got.
Okay, so he's asking if the
Oh,
police chief
okay.
has questions. He said for the fire chief or the police chief, he's asking for them to accompany us into executive. You can. In regards to this item.
Mayor,
That's consistent with our newly
That's
adopted
sad.
rules, say the city council. The city council is the only group that has the absolute right to be in there. The council has the right to say who else should be in there. And
Okay.
typically, it's always the city manager, and usually the city secretary too, if you want them to write, take notes down for a certified agenda, unless it's personnel or something, and you don't want, you're talking about the city secretary, they wouldn't be in there, or the city manager or something like that. But generally, in most city councils, it's your council, it's your manager, it's your city secretary, and then what other department heads are determined by the council to be necessary for the discussion of the topics that are in there, or to provide comfort for those who are in there.
Mayor, we had an agenda item last session, and we settled this. So I don't think there's a question here.
Okay, I have a question. I am aware of that. We had that. But we have a sergeant and term. I don't know if that's what you don't want in the executive session. So are you excluding the
This is a
police-
clever way around what we decided last week. Let's leave it at that. We decided no.
All right, council, give me a motion on which members of city staff that you would like to attend the executive session tonight.
City manager, who I like,
And let's put it on the record.
city manager.
Okay, I need you to make a motion.
A motion.
Okay, you're making a motion just for the city manager. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of allowing the city manager in the executive session, please raise your hand. It's unanimous, motion is carried. Anybody else in executive session, council?
We might have some manager who he feels he needs. to
Okay,
make the
Mr. Batla, who would you need in there?
Don Martin will have most of the information.
That's right, he's got it.
I make a motion that Don Martin attend the executive session.
All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous, motion is carried. Anybody else in executive session?
Want your lawyer there?
You want your lawyer there? Because
I
we're
can
not,
send me
this is not consult with attorney, so other than that, he would be normally required to be in there, but this is a deliberation about real property.
Mayor, this is ludicrous. It really
I'm
is.
following the rules of order and procedure, this is council
But this is
adopted.
ludicrous. We don't have to decide every time we want to go into
Yes, you do,
executive
sir.
session. Fire away.
All right, council, do I have a motion for the city attorney? Do you want him back in the executive session?
Yes.
Well, we could have done this all in one motion. You guys are doing it in 3 motions. I didn't do it in 3 motions. Who has a second?
It doesn't say we have to make a motion, it says we have to agree on who comes back.
And how do I get your agreement without a motion or a consent?
We don't need a motion, we just agree. The city manager, Mr. Martin, and the attorney. Boom.
All right, let's complete the process. We have a motion about the city attorney on the floor to include him in executive session. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Those
So-
opposed? Oh,
Are we voting for,
we're voting for the city attorney.
yes, city attorney, yeah.
Okay, motion is carried, it's unanimous. Any other motions, council, about anybody else you'd like to include in executive session?
So, it might be frustrating, Mayor, it might be frustrating for us. These are the rules we just passed. We said we are going to follow them.
So make your motion.
Yes, I know, and that's why I'm saying I requested for,
I don't hear a motion.
okay, then I make a motion to request. I know the city manager is going to represent the fire chief. I make a motion for the police chief to be in executive session so I can be able to ask questions that I have regarding this matter that we are going to discuss.
Why do we keep asking him to go back there when he really doesn't want to be back there? You see, he looks depressed when he's back there. Every time he's back there, he's just in his zone. I mean, why are we doing that to the man?
He's a department head. Sergeant at Arm is the one that does maintain order in the meeting.
You got a motion, do you have a second?
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second? Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. It is 7:23 PM.
The only other person, I don't know who, the law says you're required to have a certified agenda. Someone typically takes some rudimentary notes. In my experience, that's usually the city secretary. So I would say unless somebody else wants to take those notes, you have the city secretary go back in executive session too.
Okay,
Traditionally, it's been our presiding officer, but I'll go if y'all want me to.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know how y'all, I know you don't record the executive sessions, but is there usually a certified agenda or something?
there's a
that's
sheet
afterwards?
back there that,
I
yeah,
mean,
is,
As long as somebody takes care of that, it doesn't have to be the city secretary. We'll make
It's
sure
already
that gets done.
pre-printed.
It could be the manager, that's fine.
okay. Okay, 7:23 PM, council is adjourned into executive session.
get back in motion, I'd like to make a comment. We want to address Rob Foster from here on out as Big Money Rob.
All right, we are going to reconvene back into open session at 8:09 PM. All right, council, do I have a motion to authorize staff to formalize the sale of real property conducive to the terms discussed in executive session?
So move.
Do I have a second? Who was the second? Bells? Johnson? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to authorize staff to formalize the sale of real property conducive to the terms discussed in executive session by Foster and a second by Johnson. All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Motion is carried. Agenda item number 10, request for future items on the agenda. Council, do you have any requests for anything you would like on the next agenda, which was, what's the date? April 4th will be the next meeting?
I'd like to ask a question, more or less. We discussed at one time our reports from our police department and fire department, and it's been a long, long time since we've done that. Are we doing those quarterly?
Mr. Batla, do you want to answer that?
I believe we have, as a placeholder on next agenda, reports by different city departments. But we'd actually like to move that a couple council meetings later so that we can have our mid-year data.
Okay.
But yes, I would like to present all departments, but I'd like to get our mid-year data to kind of show you where it's at.
Good.
Okay. Anything else?
Mayor, in addition to the recommendation that we made from the city attorney about the charter to the charter committee, I'd like to request for a discussion about something that it's just a recommendation or discussion about the mayor pro tem. This one might be able to, if we talk, because I can't talk about it if it's not an agenda item. So I have some recommendation that I would like to make, but we might talk about it next week so that we can be able to recommend it to the committee for the charter update. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, council? All right, it's 8:12 PM. Meeting is adjourned.